Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about software architects. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how do software engineer architects stay up to date with reality after not coding for several years? They go back to school and they learn how to do things again. Well, I'm joking, of course, because that's not what they do. What they do is that they stubbornly stay in companies and mess everything up for everybody, because it's more important to them to keep their job and position than it is to do well and to do what's right for everybody. It's similar to how a lot of our leaders and politicians are so out of touch with reality that if they had any well, the only thing that they should be doing is to resign because they're incompetent, but they don't, because stupid people usually are either very selfish or too dumb to realize that they have lost touch with what's actually relevant. And you know you have lost touch with what is relevant when you don't even understand anymore what it is that what the impact of your decision is, what your decisions are, and when you don't actually know anymore how the people who are doing the thing that you are planning actually works. If you don't know how it works, then why the fuck are you planning things? Because then you've reached a point where you are really only good for one thing, and that is to draw boxes on a flowchart or a UML or something like that. And I deal with a lot of these people, and all I can say is that the time it takes them to get to the same point a group of modern day well-informed senior software developers will in basically a few days, maybe a week or two, is measured in months. Their UML chart is not done for months, but in that time most of the system can already be built, because the people who actually know how to do all the things that are necessary to make a system, they're actually software developers, not architects. Usually, that doesn't mean that every software developer is made equal, but I'm saying that good people, actually good software engineers, are better at architecture than any architect I've ever met. And the way that you stay up to date and so forth with this is that you actually have to know how to do the things that make up software. Because this idea that you used to have, because this is how it used to work, guys. Management was the thing that drove software engineering back in the day, where you had a top-down approach, where the software engineer was just a code monkey, where you just had people at management, the managers put the specification together, pushed it downwards to the with the help of architects, because even the managers were smart enough to realize that, hey, shit, we don't know how to design a system. Maybe we should hire someone who does know that. And so you create the architect. And so the architect is now responsible for creating the blueprint, which is, if you haven't thought about that, literally a copy-paste implementation of how construction working works. It's the same thing. So you create a blueprint and push it down to the next level, which is where you actually implement the thing. And that's how you did it. Today we have realized that actually, you know what? The architects have no way of keeping up with what is technologically possible anymore. So in order for you to have a good, a modern way of working and making sure that you sort of have a relevant tech stack and you're making the right decisions and so forth, you actually have to make sure that the person who's designing and creating the roadmap, that person has to have a pretty good darn understanding of what's going on, because just as the the managers who hires the architect has realized that we don't actually understand of our own digital landscape, and therefore we need someone who does. Well, the architect can fall for the same trap. The architect can become this redundant person that sort of is in the same situation as the manager. It's just another manager who can draw an UML chart. And this is actually it's very common that this does happen. And so for them to actually stay in touch with reality, they will need to code in their spare time, or in some fashion they will need to be involved at the engineering level, not necessarily so that they are equal to all the engineers, but at least to a level where they can speak the same sort of language. Because I can tell you right now, my friends, when you get to a point, and I've been here many times, where a software team has to explain to the technical architect how to implement something, you have a problem. Because now you have a person who is supposed to be a technical individual, who's supposed to lead the vision and the direction of the software engineering team, who doesn't even understand what it means to write software. That is unsustainable. And it is one of the main reasons why corporations and where people go to the startup world, where they are free to make their own decisions. Because when you have an idiot like that in a company, you literally have it's similar to having an incompetent general. Where in this case we're not dying, but you just imagine that yourself. Imagine being a soldier with an incompetent general who has an ego problem or some shit like that, where this person will literally make you go and die because they don't know how to do their job. And so it is the ultimate responsibility of an architect, in my opinion, because in my opinion the architect is it's the top of the pyramid of the engineering department. If that person does not know how to go down and actually write the software or help out with building services or things like that, that person should not have the job. And it's actually very simple for such an individual to stay in touch, because you simply have to be able to do the same sort of thing as the software developers are doing. You don't have to be equal to them or do it as equally, but if you become an architect the way that, in my opinion, it should happen, which is down up, then you should not need. It's sort of like riding a bicycle. You don't have to code on a daily basis to remember how to code if you've done it for years. But if you've never written anything even resembling the sort of stuff that you're making decisions on, well, as I said, then you're basically as useful as a junior level software developer. But luckily for you, you're charismatic enough that the people who are hiring you, you can trick them into believing that you're more useful than you actually are. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way to stay up to date as an architect, if you haven't been coding for years, is very simple. Get back to school. There are tons of courses. You're basically just going to go through it the same way as the junior software developers are. And then go through the stack. Because this is something that you should have been doing. I understand if you didn't do it, because if you're all in the game, it wasn't necessarily the way things were done back in the day. It's the curse. This is what progress is basically about. You have now moved into an era where, in order for you to be effective at orchestrating systems and so forth, you actually need to know about the tools and why they are useful and why they're not useful, because otherwise, as I like to say, you're just another manager. And that's the problem with the middle management. They're full of on average, middle management is full of people who sort of know some stuff, but mostly they're redundant. And the people who actually know how to get results are further down in the organization. It's just that you need people at that level to communicate with even higher management, depending on how big the organization is. And the key element to a successful software company is that the people who are all the way from building up to the people who are making design decisions about the system need to all speak the same language. If that is not happening, then I would argue that it's on everybody who is part of that pyramid structure to go and learn the things that are necessary to make software, successful software development, happen. And it's actually very simple. It's actually never been more simple to learn how to use all the tools and code and so forth. Have a great day.